Hi everyone, I'm Diana Rosa. I am co-organizer of the EQUUS Film Festival. I am also the media and relations manager for Equitana USA. And the EQUUS Film Festival is going to also be there, and maybe some of these filmmakers will be there as well. And so we like to give the filmmakers an opportunity to be showcased, to be able to talk about their films, and that's exactly what we're going to do now. So we're going to take you one at a time. I want you to talk about your film, get into the nitty-gritty a little bit, and talk about what it was like behind the scenes, however you want to take it, whatever you want to have as your message. Keep it somewhat tight, but I still want to give you free rein to have the opportunity to say what you want. Make sure you let people know how they can reach you at the end.
First one, my name is Charles Perry. I'm the director and producer for a documentary working on a Black Cowboy, and produced a special cut actually for the EQUUS Film Festival called Pony Express, so that focused more on horse culture. And being in film and like working on this documentary, you come to find out that horses played a huge role in pretty much every civilization there is in this country. Or not this country, in the world. All the way from Mongolia to horse culture in Africa, horse culture down in, and even in different parts of the United States, like Oklahoma. And you find out that they have black farmers, and black farmers who need horses to go ahead and for your livelihood. And so the documentary that I made called The Black Cowboy focuses on the horses and the horse culture in the African American community, which is really not seen in the mainstream. And I had a lot of experience working with people that own horses on Caucasian Americans, white Americans, and other things, but to see African Americans doing the same exact things and any other horse people do, and then see it up close and actually get a chance to shine light on people who never had a chance to see it in the mainstream. It's been a pleasure to have people who look like me, that have the same love and the same dedication for horses just like everybody else. So so I'm so excited to be here. This is my producer, Marcus Perry, that's been working beside and been one of the main people to get the story along, and I'm just going to have to tell his story.
I don't have much to add to what he said, but I've pretty much been with him day one to win. Working with him and kind of parallel to him at the same time. When he's in New York and when we came into Cincinnati, we drove to Oklahoma, for Oklahoma, Tulsa, Dallas, Texas, New Mexico, Las Cruces, LA, Portland, Montana. We pretty much been everywhere together. Some long days. We weren't always the best of friends, but we always kind of made up at the end of the day. It's just been a ride. It's been 5 years. I'm just very pleased at how it's kind of evolved to this. It's bigger than we thought it would be in the beginning. That first call we got, that first trip I took to Oklahoma, we didn't think we'd be here at this point. So it's just been a great journey. Glad that my brother is to share his
Thomas Balsamo, and produced 2 films. I said Wade, talk to. But we produced 2 films, Animal Therapy in the Animals Helping People category, and we started working in this area about 10 years ago, and it's amazing the things that we have experienced, the miracles that we've seen. One of the groups is Walk On in Barrington, Illinois, and they have the big, full-size horses, and we've watched many individuals and interviewed them and how their lives were touched. Like this one individual with Parkinson's, pretty much barely able to walk and barely able to move around, started with the horse therapy with the the wagon and behind her, the cart, the terminology is. But he ends up learning how to be able to drive. And we have him filmed in a scene, and he's amazing and how his life has changed because of that. And then with the other film, we follow the mini horses, therapy horses around. It's called the Human Animal Connection, and that's with Soul Harbor Ranch in Barrington, Illinois as well. And they are so amazing, the team of people. And we follow the horses to pediatric centers where kids were in for 9 or 10 months. And we went to Markland, Little Angels, where the people are severely handicapped. And these individuals were, live in a wheelchair, and they're nonverbal, and they couldn't even move their hands and arms. But when they brought the mini horse up, and then when the volunteers took their hand and touched the horse, the joy that just showed up on their faces is just so amazing. And it really is truly a miracle, the healing power of these horses, and how their lives, so many lives are really touched. And no matter what the situation of all the, the people that, are the visitors of these great little animals, they're just so touched. And no matter what problems they're having, they forget about those problems for a few minutes, and they get like a little break, a little vacation, and it's just incredible. And World Touch Productions in Barrington, Illinois, and I'm a producer and I kind of co-direct. And this is Wade, and he's our master editor and director.
So yeah, I'm Wade Balsamo from World Touch Productions. He's my dad, and we've been working together on documentaries for about 10, 11 years now. And it's our mission is to create social cause documentaries that inspire people to see, to show the good in the world and show people who are out there making a difference in other people's lives. So we work with a lot of different non-for-profit organizations, and one of the first documentaries that we had made that had really inspired me to realize that this was what I wanted to do with my life, was to create documentaries, was about Walk On Farm. And it was about this mom who had a son with autism, and she just talked about how amazing it was that when the little boy was able to get on the horse, that he had shown so much progress and had been able to learn how to communicate so much better, and it had just changed their life. But for me as a filmmaker, being able to edit that into a story, that was the first time that something had clicked, that like, whoa, this sense of a story that can have this sense of a progression, that a viewer can see a journey and live through that and experience some of that inspiration that mother felt. And so about a couple of years ago, we followed up and did another documentary about Walk On Farm that's going to be showing today in this theater behind us in just a few minutes. And we followed up with a man with Parkinson's and a woman with MS, and it was just, it's interesting how our approach to these equine therapy documentaries has kind of evolved as we've really begun to understand what it is that's so healing. On one hand, yes, there's the physical things of being on a horse, but yet there's so much more to the emotional connection of being able to feel like you're being understood and you're being loved by this animal. And so this last year, we created another documentary called The Human and Animal Connection, following miniature therapy horses, where they were going into hospitals and pediatric centers and hospice centers, and it really changed from this thing that was initially, we thought of it almost as this, it's not a physical therapy, it's an emotional therapy, it's a mental therapy. There's so much healing power to being close with these animals, and to just to experience life in a way that, a lot of these kids they're in hospitals, and that they might never have that opportunity to even see a horse. But when you could bring a miniature therapy animal in, or an old man with Parkinson's, when you're Parkinson's, you're normally you're stuck in your house, but to be able to get out and drive a carriage. It's like an opportunity to live life. That's so cool. Those are the stories we want to share. Those are the things that inspire people that, you know, there's just so many good people who are sharing these majestic animals with each other, and that's how we need to be with humanity, is just sharing things that inspire us and that make us human, and make us experience something that's so special, beyond words. And,
Let me have the mic back this way, so we have one other person here, and then I'll.
We did get to ride an elevator with a horse, too.
oh yes.
Hello, my name is Karen Seiler, and I come all the way down from Spain to here. And until February this year, I was a normal woman running a normal company and owning a very special story, which I had the courage to share with the social community worldwide. And it was a short movie, about 12 minutes, telling my personal story about how a white horse found me again, and that our souls are connected through 400 years, and that we had a past life together. And in that past life, in the medieval ages in France, I had been a female warrior, and this horse, or the soul of that horse, had been there with me to fight for the rights of the women. And because we couldn't complete the mission, he decided to come back and to awake my memory. And it's a crazy story, but I said it like I say it now, in a very natural and grounded way, and it became viral. And this story traveled the world, and within a few months, it turned my life upside down. And I decided, because of all the interest of all the women and men in the world, to follow the traces and to go back to France, to the place where I lived 400 years ago. And there I made a real movie. And this movie was made now in August. And it was screened here yesterday. And it had the premiere a week ago in Germany, in a big cinema. And I can say so far that when I say now who I am, I have a totally different identity. I sold my company, I'm living in a truck with my horse. I'm a global nomad, and I decided to be a filmmaker because I love to tell stories, to inspire people to believe in more than what they see. And also to awaken the memories in each and every one that we are all born in this lifetime with a mission. And something we have to do and to give to transform this planet. And that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Chip St. Charles. I'm a student filmmaker. I've got a narrative short film in the festival. My story of the film, so I've 25 years in the military, coming up on transitioning or retiring out of the military and trying to decide what I want to be when I grow up. I have a very good friend who's I call him a famous horse trainer, movie horse trainer. So when I had to do a student film for school, I said, well, naturally, why not use this resource that I have? So go to him and I said, hey, I've got an idea for a little short film. Why don't we come and get one of the horses in it? Luckily, I get a fairly famous horse in the horse community. So I think it was 2 days of filming, probably 2 months of editing, 4 crew members, all students as well. Ends up with almost 10-minute film. Watched it again for the first time in 6 months yesterday. Remembered how cheesy it was. But we enjoyed it, and I hope everybody else enjoys it also. If it shows at Equitana, then of course I'll be back here at Equitana. I am a local here in Georgetown, Kentucky, so thank you all.
Thank you. My name is Steve Post, and I wanted to first of all just thank EQUUS for inviting us, and also to say what an honor it is to be amongst the filmmakers here on the stage. I'm the executive producer of a film called Bayes, The Anatomy of a Winner. It's a documentary, it's a character study, it's done in a cinema verite style. It's about 57 minutes, and it took 14 years to make. So there's just all kinds of different ways to make a documentary. An interesting story. My background is not in film. I'm a horseman. I breed and race horses, steeplechase, flat racing. Done it for 30 or 40 years. During the course of the time that I did that, I've run into individuals within the industry who I think are iconic, and one of these people was Russell Bayes. And just like having an old jalopy on in your backyard, and your kids kind of say, "Gosh, Dad, when are you ever going to do anything with that jalopy? Are you going to fix it, put it in a car show?" And yeah, and one day I'm going to get to that. So when my son was 25, and he was in the industry with his best friend, he said, "Dad, let's start on that Bayes project." And now, 14 years later, we've done it, and I'm just so proud of that accomplishment. Meanwhile, the two individuals, the two co-directors of the film, have done amazing jobs with their life. They're both approaching 40. My son has received his second Emmy nomination for a reality television show called Born This Way. And he's a successful producer, editor in Los Angeles. Nick, again, 14 years ago, was just starting in the industry and now is a very successful director of commercials. So they've both gone on to wonderful things. The story is the story of really transition, of somebody who is looking at their life and realizing that they've accomplished a lot and beginning to wonder, when will it end and how will it end? And that's the tension in the movie and the film. And I think that the filmmakers have done an outstanding job of capturing what it's like to go through life and then face some of the decisions that we have to face as we get older. So thank you.
I'm a little more scoochie.
It's an honor to share the stage with everybody who put in and created the project. I had the chance to, my name's David Glossberg. I made a documentary named Mustang Saviors, and it was a call to an answer of what I had put an intention out in the world. What could I do? And it came back as somebody pointing and saying, you should do a documentary about this. So this was the topic. It was veterans working with wild horses, and a therapeutic center in Illinois that uses veterans to work with and gain the trust in gentle wild horses. And now those wild horses have become therapeutic horses in a horse program. And I followed for a few years, 3.5 years it seems, of production. I learned a lot through the process. I've never made a film besides a few short class films at a class I took in 2011. So this was being in the film industry in Chicago in production as a crew member. I've watched enough films being made and TV shows, and so took the next step into making a film. And it's a really fulfilling process and project to have completed to the minute. We just gave the files, so today we'll see the version of the film that through the process I learned I left out part of a very important, controversial, challenging topic within the film. So I added a few more voices to the other side of that story. So today is the world premiere of Mustang Saviors. And hashtag Mustang Saviors, I guess, is one way to follow the film and find out more. And there's a Facebook page if you want to follow that. We'll start to update with what is going on and what's happened. And it was an honor to be the person to tell the story. It was something that came through me. And I encourage anybody else that is, and these people up here can attest, that if you're called to do something and you answer that calling, the things you become and the people you become through it are better and more, and that's part of the film, of finding what's inside you and getting a new purpose and following it with a passion. So I encourage everybody to do that the same, and to see Mustang Saviors in theaters soon. Thank you so much.
You know, I think what's interesting about this panel is that we're talking about films that are all different types of films, and behind the scenes as filmmakers, you are addressing different issues. You are dealing as two Black filmmakers. I'm curious to know, because I'm going to go down the line, I'm curious to know more about behind the scenes, and do you feel that it was harder for you to do this than a Caucasian or something else, or do you feel that there were issues that you dealt with? You're dealing with healing of horses, and how does that compare to things that maybe that you've done that isn't healing? Look at yourselves behind the scenes. You're dealing with wild animals and a subject that you didn't know very well, and what did you learn from it? But I want you all to think of your response from a filmmaker's perspective. You're talking to filmmakers, and you want to help them understand what are some of the trials and tribulations that you faced and how you dealt with them.
Let's start with you. I still have to think.
So as a citizen of this country of African American descent, some of the things that we are taught is what we are shown on media. What we've seen. When I first saw my first Black cowboy, I honestly thought he was adopted. Because my imagination didn't let me allow for me to imagine that he came from a Black cowboy family, and a Black cowboy brother, a Black cowboy grandmother and grandpa. It wasn't in part of my imagination being from Los Angeles. And so our history is more than what is shown, what is out there with minorities and women too, And so it's nice to, the challenges as a filmmaker actually to find subjects that are little talked about, and to bring exposure to a subject that everybody should know about, because bottom line is we are all American, and Black cowboys are just, it shouldn't be Black cowboys, it should be just straight up cowboy. But you got to preface that, I feel like, so we can get that point out of it, and then all of a sudden, the film is actually taken away when you see the cowboy's life, living the life as any other American out there just trying to make the American dream. And the relationship to horses is just as loving as any other horse person out there, and one more thing to add to that, and I close with this, is that I had an experience of being in a cowboy family up in Montana. I've always been curious about people's lives, and I asked my cowboy father, what do you care about? And it was somewhere like, God's, family, animals, and guns, And fast forward, 20 years later, I get a chance to ask the same age rancher that was Black, and I remember this question I asked this white cowboy, and I asked a Black cowboy the same question: what do you care about? And the answer was exactly the same. And so that's really is the true point I'm trying to get across, that, we're all American, we all bleed the same, we all love the country, we all, pretty much love God, and media has the impact that we can actually change the narrative in this country where, we more alike than different.
Let's go to you first, and then we'll come back to Karen, because you can sort of relate to the same response.
Yeah, so I was born in LA and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I live today. So I've pretty much just been in the city for most of my life. So this project, I remember right before it started, I was wearing a Halloween costume. I was dressed in a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, but I remember feeling like this just it didn't feel like a costume. it felt real, you know, and I remember thinking that, and then I think about a year later, Charles told me about Oklahoma, and about the Cowboys he saw down there. He's like, you want to be part of it? I said, of course. So I remember I drove down there, and it was, I would say it kind of changed my life. I'd never seen, you know, cowboys that were of African American descent. I remember just being a black person myself, I felt kind of, I guess, cheated that I didn't even know this part that exists. So I knew that right then and there that I really wanted to be a part of this. And you know, I just always had a feeling for the outdoors, and so it was just a special kind of connection for me. And I'm just very excited, very, yeah.
That was the best thing you could have given.
Yeah.
Because sometimes silence.
It's over with it. I have to talk all day about it.
Okay. I'd like to tell you a story. As a good storyteller, it's always the best to show you the behind-the-scenes things. And when I decided to make a movie out of my past life story, of course I wanted to buy a truck to travel with my horse. And I remember as if it was yesterday when I went to EQUUS. This is the biggest horse fair in Germany. And it's, I went into that hall with all the big trucks. And you know, these kind of truck sellers, I mean all men in suits. And you cannot expect that one of them is spiritual. But I decided to not tell my story in a different way. So I went to each of these men in their suits, sitting there on their booths, or how to say stairs. And I just told my story, and I said, look, this is what I want to do. This is what I believe in, and you can be part of it in selling me the best truck you have. And I promise you, in all the conversations I had with each of the companies which I wanted to win for my project, there was not one person who was singled out that my story isn't true. It's because it's always the way you tell it. If you tell something totally unbelievable and incredible in a way of, if you're shy or think, oh, maybe it's true, but maybe not. No, I just said it as if I say, well, tomorrow I will buy new trousers. And that's what I learned is that we are all spiritual beings, we are all energetical beings, and we all know it, but nobody talks about it. And I want to make it natural again. I want to make it an everyday experience, which is the same as you brush your teeth, that you pray, or that you are connected with the spirits. And I'm very happy that I can do it together with a horse, because I know that this white horse, and especially because he's white, he has an amazing power. And people also see him behind me, even if he's not there. He is now in Toulouse, in France, waiting for me that I complete my tour, because he cannot go with me to the States, maybe next year. But he's here. And yes, I'm very happy that I can bring the magic back to the people. That's what I want to do.
You've worked on a lot of different types of social cause films, on extensive amount of work in the world of autism. You helped raise $6.5 million for Autism Speaks, working with Toys R Us. We worked with CNN. We worked with Health and Human Services. And Gigi's Playhouse, the Down Syndrome Awareness Center. We've done a lot of films for them, starting from the very beginning, helping to kind of brand. Now there's 46 of them nationwide because of a gallery show that we did that traveled around the country. Done a lot of work with them. And then moving into the animal therapy area, there is a common thread between a lot of the work that we do, and that is the sharing of unconditional love. That is it's the most amazing place It's our purpose to be able to try to save the world. I believe that kids with disabilities are here to teach us all, teach the whole world about unconditional love. And then seeing the volunteers in the world of animal therapy, it's all about love and unconditional love. And you see how hard these people work. And Soul Harbor Ranch just has a new barn built, but they had, before their pasture during certain times of the year was like muddy, really muddy. And so each time they had to go out on a visit, which I think they've done 160 this year so far, they had to spend at least an hour on each horse, cleaning up the mud, you know, and there was no volunteers that ever had any issues with that. They did it out of love. And then they go and they bring the horses in to these places, and it's all about love and unconditional love. And I think that's the magic. That's the magic that we strive to be able to get out. And with our films, you know, our hope and our tagline with World Touch Productions is leaving lasting impressions on hearts and minds. And that's our standard, that's our goal. And we have many of our films, people at the end of the audience are all wiping their eyes and they've all been touched. And we, you know, fortunately, you know, a lasting impression has been, you know, and people have donated a lot of money because that ability has been somehow gifted to us. Or we have this responsibility to be able to do this in everything that we do. When we put that love into the films that we make, and it's really a joy and a privilege and an honor to be able to serve the world in that way, and that's kind of how we look at what we do.
One of the things that I've noticed as a filmmaker creating these different animal therapy documentaries is trying to capture something that's totally intangible, something that's so emotional that's like, for example, there's one hand that you can easily see the difference with a man is struggling to walk with Parkinson's, and he has the shaky hands, and when you see him driving a carriage and his hands are on the reins, you can see the physical differences. It's very visual, and you can shoot the before and the after, and you see night and day. But when it's something emotional, when it's something spiritual, when it's this connection, that how do you show that? Because it's physically, you might look kind of the same. You can't. What can you tell that's actually different? But then trying to see that light in somebody's eye, that sparkle that comes up. That somebody who might have been having a lot of anxiety in a hospital room, the horses come to visit them and their heart rate calms down, and they slow down for a moment, and they really have this moment of joy and peace, and it's like everything is okay for a little bit. And to be able to show that in a way that's, it's the same shot of the same person laying in the same bed before, and they're laying in the same bed after. And maybe there's a little bit more of a smile afterward, maybe they're a little more giggly and more of a sparkle in the eye. But I guess that's one of the challenges as a filmmaker is it's not a big shift. It's very subtle sometimes, but yet it's so powerful. And to be able to portray that in a way that everybody in the audience, every viewer can see and understand and feel that feeling of what that patient, whatever they're experiencing inside of themselves, whatever that shift is that happens, that's beyond what can be explained or described or even like visually shown. It's like there's something more emotional that we've been trying to capture, and trying to do that in such an authentic way as a documentarian, where you bring a camera into a room and it changes kind of the air in the room. A lot of people, they act a little bit differently. They sit up a little straighter and they get a little stiffer, and trying to get past that. Trying to let them kind of forget that the camera's there, but yet there's always the camera's there. But trying to show that in this very real way, so that the audience is in that room, in that moment, seeing what's just real life. That's what we're trying to do.
Alright. I feel like I should sit up here and just learn from everybody else. So, first narrative film. I guess the biggest things to fellow filmmakers, if you're going to work with, of course, my first narrative film, and they say don't work with animals or kids. A little girl who's an amazing actress, her dad, and then a horse. So, some of the things I learned, I guess, as a filmmaker, if you're going to work with animals, especially horses, is make sure that you have a big budget, which I of course do not. If the horse doesn't know something, the trainer can teach it, but depending on what you want the horse to know and to be able to do, that horse may be stuck with that until they can retrain it, or that maybe that horse's gig from now on. So a lot of people probably don't realize that when you see a horse that acts bad in a movie, it could be that horse's main job from then on is just to act bad. Whether it won't load the trailer. If anybody saw my film, there's a scene where they're trying to load the horse breaks free while it's getting away from the trailer and runs off. The trainer gave me, I think we got 2 takes with that, and the third take, that was it. He said, we're done, because I can't let you do it again. And I said, oh, well, I don't understand. He said, because what I'm doing is I'm training the horse now to act up every time he tries to go on a trailer. So things like that you don't think of as a filmmaker until I've been around horses, I've been around this trainer, so I know about horses, but that kind of thing you never think about until you're asking, hey, can you make this horse act like it doesn't want to trailer? Okay, well now you're training the horse. So those are the things about working with horses. Not on the documentary side, but more the narrative where, hey, I need this horse to act. And horses don't act, they just respond to how we train them. So things to keep in mind.
Thank you. Well, the panel is educating me, and it's interesting when you're doing a character study, what you want to accomplish is a truthful representation of that individual. And one of the things that's most difficult is to take the camera out of the picture in order to make the individual, it's like unwrapping an onion, to get down to the inner core of that person. And when somebody is successful, they've learned to build, to compartmentalize and to build resistance to outside looks at who their inner core is. And I really felt in our movie that we were able to get to that point. And as probably always happens in filmmaking, especially documentary filmmaking, the result of that is a surprise. To find out what really motivates somebody when you're like right down to it. And for Russell Bays, it turns out it was just like loving to ride races, to be a race rider. That was what he liked to do. And that's what he wanted to do. And he ended up winning thousands of races. He ended up riding over 50,000 races. But what kept him going, I think, and that's, again, the movies, the individual is bigger than that, but why do you risk your life every day? Why do you go out and perform through multiple injuries? What makes an athlete go out there and just put it on the line every day? It's a love of what you do.
I love what you do. Words to filmmakers, that be okay with what you get. What you get is what you're supposed to get, and never say, I'm supposed to get something until after you got it, and then review, and that's what you were supposed to get. So that's something I learned, that do the best I have with what I have, when I have it, and be okay with that, and find a good editor. I followed my every urge, though, to make the footage, to get the shot, to go get the interview, and I jumped on airplanes, and I worked, and then I took that money and went to different cities across the country. And each time it was to get an interview that some is one sentence in this film, that it adds value though. And I just went after it. And follow that, is all I can say to a filmmaker. And this is a path of a documentary, so I didn't know what I was gonna get, I didn't know what I was going for, just that I felt there was an inner story that I kept asking and keeping in mind when I had the interviews, and that kept me through an arc. But when we got to the end of the day, I spoke to the editor about the story I wanted to tell, and fortunately his experience and skill set gave me back a story better than I could have ever imagined.